lot of air-to-air refueling tankers have left the United States. They're on their way across the Atlantic. So the question is, what are they going to refuel?
Let's speak now to Michael Clarke, the former Director General of the Royal United Services Institute, a defence and security think tank. He's very much a friend of this show. Good morning to you, Michael.
Yeah, morning.
This is bloody and the consequences are fatal for some people, but there is a dance going on, it seems to me, that there is people funded by Iran's strike. The West has to talk about retaliation, but no one wants to go too far. There seems to be some sort of operating instructions at play here to stop this escalating. Is that your reading of the situation?
Yes, the Western sources think that Iran does not want a regional war with Israel or with the United States because it would lose. It would certainly lose a regional war with Israel. So they don't want that. And the Iranians have got an election coming up, which does matter a little bit in Iran. And the regime is extremely unpopular domestically, and it's got a problem. So the Iranians cannot afford a regional war. That's the interpretation, rightly or wrongly. That's what the West thinks. On the other hand, the Iranians are quite prepared to play games and to go brinkmanship up to the point at which they put the West on the back foot, because the crisis in Gaza is very good for the Iranians. This gives them a chance to keep America wrong-footed, to actually unite the anti-Israeli elements across the region that don't take that much uniting, and so on. And what the West is trying to do is to indicate to the Iranians that you're too close to this line already. You've got to pull back. And quietly, America has been saying to this almost on a daily basis to Tehran. It's also saying it to Beijing to say, look, you have influence with these people. Tell them how foolish they're being. And in the meantime, we will not hesitate to respond. So there's been over 140 attacks on American facilities across the region. A lot of them, there's 30-odd thousand Americans in the region, one way or another. And there have been 140 attacks since the 7th of October. And the Americans have responded in a graduated way. They've gone after the places that have launched the attacks, and I'm sure they'll do that again. And as your previous correspondent was saying, I think they'll do it in a more, in a broader way now. And they want to do enough to try to shock the Iranians into understanding that they're right on the edge as things stand. We'll see how that goes.
Well, exactly. And for threats like that to work, the other side, both sides, have got to realise that the other side could go further, I guess.
Correct.
And that's the question: how far would America go? Because this is 3 Americans dead, 3 soldiers dead. That's going to cause outrage and grief in America in an election year. What happens if a boat, if a big military vessel gets blown up by the Houthis? What happens if a base is attacked and 10 people die? There comes a moment where the American political establishment and public might call for something further.
Yes, and they'll do that in any case. I mean, Biden is damned if he doesn't, damned if he doesn't. So he's been charged now by the Republicans for being too weak. If he gets involved in this, he'll be charged by the Republicans of taking the US into a war. I mean, that just reinforces the fact that everything that's happened since the 7th of October is like a hole in the head for any American president. This is the worst possible thing to happen, and it's worse than worse in an election year. It couldn't get worse, and every week brings worse news for Joe Biden in terms of his ability to project the sort of image that he wants, and to be honest, the image that his administration deserves, because they've done a reasonably good job in many respects. So it is getting difficult. And what I think they will try to do is they'll certainly go after these Iranian-backed groups, this Islamic resistance in Iraq that's claimed responsibility. It's a new group, undoubtedly based from Iran. They'll go after the Republican Guard, the IRGC, who are all over the region. And I think they'll go for some direct Iranian assets. I mean, they might well, the Iranians have got ships at sea who are spying for the Houthis, who are acting as surveillance ships. I wouldn't be surprised if the Americans don't go for them. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't go for some radar sites that they know that the Iranians need. And I think they'll try to hurt the Iranians to show them that, yes, we are prepared, if necessary, to go after you directly. I don't know, I'm only guessing. And this morning, I've been looking at some flight tracking data. A lot of air-to-air refueling tankers have left the United States. They're on their way across the Atlantic. So the question is, what are they going to refuel? There's obviously a buildup of American aircraft coming towards Europe because they've put the refuelers in place now as we speak.
And what could that mean, do you think?
Well, I think the Americans are reinforcing. They've got plenty of assets in the region, but they're bringing in more. And so, you don't send air-to-air refueling tankers to fly over the Atlantic unless you're bringing aircraft from the United States into Europe. I suspect that they're just reinforcing all round from some of their land bases around the region. They've got their carrier groups there, but the USS
Yeah.
Ford that was in the Mediterranean, that's now gone. The Bataan, which is a helicopter carrier, has replaced it in the Mediterranean. They've got the Eisenhower in the Gulf, just south of the Red Sea, but they may feel that they need more backup, given that they've taken away one of the big
Yeah.
carriers, and they haven't got another one immediately to replace it, it seems. So I think they may be producing more land aircraft that can go to bases in various countries that they have them.
Just finally, before you go, it feels very, very unlikely. Is there a scenario which sees the US and Iran engaged in a direct conflict? Do you think that that's at least a plausible, possible scenario somewhere along the line, or is it
Of
almost certainly
course.
never going to happen?
No, it's not never going to happen. It's a plausible scenario. And that's everybody knows that. I mean, that's always been the case since 1979, the Islamic Revolution, when all the American hostages were taken under the Carter administration. And since then, the Iranians have enjoyed the idea that they can keep tweaking the tail of America. They keep wanting to kick at America for all sorts of reasons. And still, remember, the Iranian regime every Friday at prayers they shout "Death to America." That's part of the. They've been doing it every Friday for many, many years. Death to America and death to Israel. So they make no bones about what their policy is, which is strange because the Iranian population is very pro-America. All the youngsters in Iran, the vast majority, are very modern, very well-educated, and they've got a lot of them got families in America. So they tend to be very pro-America. But the regime in Iran, this theocratic dictatorship, this brutal theocratic dictatorship, is fundamentally always playing games with the idea that it might go to war with America. It knows it can't, as I say, because it would lose. But it gets the idea. It creates the idea that it can go right up to the brink. It can keep poking America and get the credit for doing that. And ultimately, the Americans may find that they cross the line, maybe now, maybe in the future, and they actually will act against Iran.
Yeah, and then throw Donald Trump into this mix potentially from November, and who knows where it leads.